to Handi Quilter Watch and Learn. I'm Kim Sandberg, and with me today is
Denise Dowdrick.
And we're both studio educators here at Handi Quilter, and today we are going to talk all about Minky. This happens to be a topic that's near and dear to your heart, right, Denise?
It really is. I love quilting with Minky. I've been quilting with it now for about 8 years. And when I got started, I had no clue what I was doing. So I have learned a lot of tips that I'm going to share with you.
Which is awesome. We get questions all the time about how to deal with Minky. Can I use it on the back? Can I use it on the front? Can I piece with it? Can I do all of those different kinds of things? And Denise is going to answer all those questions.
Yes, all of the above. You can do all of those things and probably even more that I haven't thought of yet.
I know. Really, it's an awesome fabric. You just have to remember it's a little bit stretchy. That's the caveat going into it.
It sure is.
Yeah, from there.
Yeah, so Minky is a knit, and there's a lot of different brands and different lofts and thicknesses of Minky out there. So you're going to find what works for you and what your favorite is. But you do need to know most Minky fabrics are a single knit, which means they're going to stretch.
Yep.
But they usually only stretch in one direction.
Right.
So I get asked all the time, well, how do you load it? Do I have to load just selvage to selvage, or do I have to load across the other way on the cut edge? And you can load it however you want. So today I've actually loaded on our frame. Ours is loaded with the selvage pinned to the leader.
Okay.
And the reason I like doing that is because I get a really nice clean edge and there's no curling. You can see here on the cut edge that curls.
It does curl just a little bit.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can't be avoided, right, Denise?
Sometimes it can't be. And you actually have a great tip for managing that curly edge, don't you?
Yeah. So because sometimes that the cut edge is what you want to pin to the leader, and that is the edge that stretches. So a great tip I got when I first started is to actually take painter's tape and just put it right along that edge and then pin through that painter's tape, and it doesn't stretch at all.
I love that.
It's pretty great.
That's a great way to manage it. And it's not going to ravel. It's with cotton fabric, it's going to unravel. Your
Minky doesn't.
Minky isn't going to do that. But if you pin to this edge, the nice thing is if this is turned this way and we've pinned this way, there's no stretch that way. So a lot of people like pinning to that edge.
To the selvage,
When I've pinned to the selvage, the stretch is now going this way. And so I have to keep in mind how tightly I'm racked on the frame.
Right.
So you'll notice today it's kind of looks a little loose. It's a little droopy and bouncy. That's okay. We don't want to over tighten it. If we over tighten it, then it's stretched out as we're quilting. And then when we pull it off, you're going to get kind of an accordion scrunch.
It bounces back and you actually get a little bit of bagginess in your quilting.
Yes. And it's not the end of the world if that happens. You can just pop it in your washer and dryer, run it through a cycle, and that usually does handle it most of the time.
Yep, exactly.
So what we're going to do today...
One other question really quick. So what if you have to put a seam in that Minky?
Oh,
how should we be sure and load that backing?
That is a great question. If you have to seam your Minky, if you don't have a big enough piece and you're adding a seam, keep in mind which way you're going to load that on your frame. You want that seam to run horizontally across your frame.
Exactly.
Because then you're going to have bulk in one spot. Yeah. And I do open up that seam.
I do too.
You don't have to iron it. You're just going to kind of finger press it and the Minky's just going to flop open. And I do kind of a chunky seam, maybe about an inch.
Yeah, me too.
It's a big, so it just lays nice and flat. And I run that across so we don't have to worry about it running back and forth.
When you do that, you get a big bubble right here in the middle of the frame. And then the rest of it doesn't load and have tension properly.
Yeah, you're going to get kind of that swoopy, baggy. It's not great. So.
Exactly. And one other note, Denise has actually basted to her leaders. So this isn't, you guys will notice there aren't any pins. She actually basted this.
I did.
Which is another option.
You can pin it. Today I just thought it would be nice and easy if we stitched that on there, and then I didn't have to worry about any pins pulling or popping off. So pinning to your leaders is always an option. But if you stitch it, I just use a nice big stitch, a basting stitch, and then when I'm done, I snip the end and I just pull it right off the leader.
Yep, it works pretty slick, doesn't it?
So maybe we should talk about thread for a minute.
Yeah, let's do. What kind of thread do you recommend for quilting with Minky?
So again, this comes down to preferences. Today, We're using a thread that has some contrast so you can see as we're stitching.
We've actually got so fine loaded.
We have so fine loaded. Usually if you're going to be doing a lot of quilting, like edge to edge quilting, I would recommend a tri-lobal polyester on top. And the reason for that is if you've got Minky on the back, and especially if you have a cotton quilt top, those Minky fluffs are going to come up through your needle hole. So the tri-lobal polyester thread seems to help minimize that.
It does. It does. It doesn't have as much grab to pull the nap of the Minky up through.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
I totally agree. But we're using So Fine today, which works just fine.
Just fine because it's so fine. So it works great.
Exactly.
So before we get started, Kim had mentioned the nap. We were talking about the nap and how Minky's fluffy. So when I get ready to quilt something, today we're actually going to be sewing strips and we're going to be quilting as we go. I have actually laid out all of my strips before even starting today and made sure that the nap is going the same direction. And what I mean by that is it kind of has a direction like fur.
So when you rub it one way, it makes the nap stand up. If you rub it the other way, it makes it lay down.
Exactly.
So think of that corduroy. Corduroy is like the thing I always think of, right?
Well. Yes. So I just want to make sure that it's going the same direction. So if I pet the fabric, and I always do when I'm working with Minky because it's so soft, I just want to make sure the direction is going the same way.
Okay. And that's a good tip. And if you want some contrast, maybe you'll flip it. But be sure and check it before, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so first question, because you're going to be piecing on the long arm, what foot do you recommend we use with the long arm for
That is a great question. So I really do prefer using the HQ square feet. They come in two sizes. There's 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. Today I'm going to be using the 1/2 inch, the larger one. And the reason for that is sometimes these Minky edges can curl. And that's just going to kind of help flatten it out and manage it as we're stitching.
Absolutely, that wider. I do that. I know even when I piece with Minky on my domestic machine, I always do that wider seam allowance because it's just a little easier to manage that way.
I think so.
But sometimes you like to use the glide foot too. So we just want to mention that.
The glide foot's great and there's markings on it so you can even kind of eyeball those markings as you're going along. It's just more about keeping consistency. It doesn't have to be perfect. Minky's very forgiving to work with.
Exactly. But either one of these feet work very, very well with Minky. So, okay, I'm going to hand you our perfectly stacked, she's got the stack over here with the nap in the correct direction, so I will bring it straight over so we don't change anything. And she's got her pieces all cut here. We're just going to do strips.
We're just going to do strips. And today I have some color coordinated strips, which is great, but a lot of times I'll quilt something with a Minky backing and there's a leftover piece. And it's like, well, what do you do with it? I set that aside and I have just big buckets of Minky strips at home. And I'll pull things out, especially, oh gosh, if I have a baby shower to go to, I'll pull out some strips and kind of just see what goes together. And I can make a quilt really, really quickly like this, just out of leftovers, essentially.
It's perfect.
Isn't it great? So we're going to start with the one that's on top.
And I'll set these other ones
and I'm keeping the direction going the same way.
On the top.
And what's nice today is you'll notice I don't have to load the top to my bar, to my leader on my pole here. Because we're piecing as we go right here on the machine. So you'll notice down here what Kim's doing is she's getting the machine foot up over the fabric.
Yeah, I just popped that up, just lifted it up and slid the fabric underneath there so that it would be where it needed to be.
And then we're also lining up the edge of the Minky to the edge of the quilt over there. This is going to be a little long over here. This really doesn't matter. When I'm all done, these edges are probably not all going to line up, and that's just fine because I'm going to show you a tip on how to get a really nice edge.
Square everything up?
Yes, because on our domestic machines when we're trying to do this, it stretches and it might curl a little. It doesn't seem to matter how many pins I use. It's going to curl. So this is going to keep it straight.
You know, the reason why it does that is because of the mechanism that moves the fabric. Your feed dogs.
Your feed dogs. And
it
our
kind
long
of
arm
stretches the fabric a little bit.
Yeah, our long arm doesn't have that. And the square feet and the glide foot just glide along right over the fabric. So it's not stretching and pulling as we stitch. So
how are we going to get started over here? So I've got this up here in the corner. Do you want me to, should we play pass off quilting? I'll quilt this side and we'll just pass it off.
That would be wonderful. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to baste this first piece down. So you can use a basting stitch or you can use maybe 10 inches per inch.
Oh, 10 stitches per inch, okay.
Our first goal here is we really just want to get this secured to our backing.
Okay. And we're just going to line this up here at the top. And I have set on a basting stitch. And let me, okay. I had a clamp catching on my carriage. So I'm just going to go ahead and start basting across here, and you guys can see I'm just putting a little bit of tension on both sides with my hand. And I'll just stop. When I get about halfway across, I'll pass it off to you.
I think that's great. I think what helps here too is we actually have the ruler base installed underneath, and it just acts like a table. So we have a surface under there to help kind of give us a little bit of control.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Denise, I'm going to let you jump in there. Okay. Oh, and I left the machine on. Sorry. There you go. You just keep moving that.
Okay, so we're just going to move along.
And we're doing that half inch seam allowance because we like that for Minky. Oh, and
we're just basting
Denise moved up closer to the edge. We'll be able to tell which side of the quilt is mine and which side of the quilt is yours.
Well, also Kim's a lot taller than I am, so her arms are longer and her reach is longer than mine. So
it makes a difference.
This is fun playing catch up here.
Okay, so now you're over here to the edge of this fabric. So you're not going to go clear to the edge. We're going to leave a little bit.
I'm going to notice where my side clamps are, and I have my ruler base engaged here. Right. If that's getting in your way, you can undo a clip. So so you can keep going, but I don't think it's going to give us too much trouble. Now I'm going to go ahead and just baste down. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to baste down the side yet. I think what I'd like to do is we're going to baste down the side over there, and then we're going to come across. And this time, we're going to use our channel locks. So we should probably talk about channel locks.
Let's talk about channel locks for a second. So you go ahead and clip those threads.
Okay.
We've got the scissors here for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim. Oh, see, my clamp did get in the way.
That's okay, though. It just popped right back out of the way like it needed to.
Okay, and then I'm just going to put the scissors away there.
Okay, and I'll grab the machine and pull it back across here to the other side. And let's talk about channel locks for a minute. So if we want to get perfectly straight lines, what's the best way to do it?
Best way to do it is using channel locks. And we have 3 different kinds of channel locks available with our Handi Quilter machines here. So our simple channel lock is really great for this too, but you're going to have to remember to keep a really light touch. So I recommend just use a couple of fingers on the handlebar if you have these channel locks engaged.
And these are the ones that you just put on the wheels either of the machine or on the wheels of the carriage.
That's right, Kim.
To lock it in place. So if you're a complete free motion quilter, this is your best bet.
Absolutely.
Although you could use a ruler too, right?
You could. If you want to use a ruler, because we have our square feet on, we can use a ruler with our square foot. So that is really nice.
But we have a couple of other options for channel locks too. You can always use the electromagnetic channel locks if you have those installed on your machine. Also, if you have a Pro Stitcher, you can use your channel locks. So,
and that's what we're going to do today because we have our Pro Stitcher on today. So what we're going to have Kim do on this side is she's just going to simply baste down the side.
Okay.
And then when she gets to the bottom of the strip, within a 1/4 inch of the bottom of the strip, she is going to engage the horizontal channel lock. So we can then come all the way across. If you want to throw a few pins into the strip, you can.
Just to stabilize the fabric?
Just to stabilize it. Again,
here, how about if I hand those
that
to you?
square foot isn't going to grab onto the fabric the same way it would on a domestic machine with those feed dogs. But sometimes it's nice just having a couple of pins in there. Just remember to pull these out as you approach them so you don't stitch over those.
Okay, so I am it's a generous 1/4 inch. Is that okay? Or are we piecing it to half?
You know, I like coming as close to the edge as I can.
Okay.
These basting stitches can come back out later, so they aren't going to show.
Yeah, I was just going to say for engaging my channel lock to go across. Do you think I'm in a good distance?
I think you're good right there.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on my horizontal channel lock. And then what's the next step? I'm going to stitch this down.
We're going to stitch this down. We're going to baste this first strip
with the basting stitch
all the way on.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start basting across here then. Go ahead and baste across here, putting a little bit of pressure on the one side just to counteract the little bit of pull we're getting because the fabric is a little stretchy. So right there, I'm going to pass that off to you, Denise.
Perfect.
And I'm going to put my clamps back on this side. And we'll watch out for those pins. We always want to make sure and take those pins out.
Take those pins out. Now, I do know some people, too, who even like to use a little bit of spray based or something.
I do that.
To
I will
put
actually
their strips down on their batting. And today we are using batting. You don't have to.
Nope.
The Minky can be a little bit slippery, so I like using a nice thin batting
and then we've got
that has a really nice soft drape to it. Today we're actually using a bamboo.
Yeah,
I love the way it drapes.
And you know, with Minky, you don't always want the loft, and so bamboo can be perfect because it is, there's not a lot of loft with a bamboo batting.
That's
more
right.
about the drape.
It's about the drape. Absolutely. But there's lots of different types of batting you can use. So I'm approaching the edge here. Running into, so
there's the next
you
pin.
Can see from where Kim started basting to where I did, there is kind of a discrepancy here. That's why we baste first. It does a couple of different things for us. It's establishing a straight line for us to add the next strip. And I'm just going to go ahead and take those channel locks off now. But also it's holding this strip down so we can add the next strip right over the top of it.
That's perfect. Okay. And then
so
we'll go ahead and pull that back.
That thread. We'll pull that back. And then we're going to go ahead and add another strip.
Okay. So the next strip I have here, I'm going to hand it over, straight over, so that it is the same direction that you had before. And we're going to go ahead and do this. And you know what? Let's switch to the glide foot just so we can show everybody
I think that's a great idea.
How you do this with the glide foot. So you guys have kind of seen with the square foot here how that all works. We're going to switch to the glide foot. So I'll just do a quick change here.
And while she's changing that out, Kim's got that under control. I am laying out the next strip of fabric. And remember what we said about the nap, the direction that kind of this fur is going. So I've laid this out so they're both coming down toward me.
Okay.
So if I brush that way, you can see it brushes up. So I'm going to lay that out first to make sure I have the direction going the way I want. And then we're going to flip this strip right over the top.
Okay. And I'm just going to slide that right underneath that foot.
And then down here on this side, Kim's going to line up those strips vertically so they match each other.
Lined up here along this edge.
And over here, we're not going to worry about it. Matter of fact, you can even snip these off. I was just using the width of fabric here.
Yeah.
So all I did was cut strips and didn't worry about really how long they were.
Yeah.
And again, we have a few pins if you want to pop a few pins in just to kind of keep
stabilize things
together.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I'm going to move that up just a little bit. I want to be able to see the other fabric underneath. I want to make sure that I don't have this down so far that I might not catch both edges together.
Okay, so we want to make sure that you can actually just barely see that fabric underneath. Just barely see it. Okay, I like that. Okay, cool. That looks really good.
All right, so we've switched to our glide foot. So we're just going to kind of eyeball. Before I even start stitching a lot of times, I'll even just lock that horizontal and bring it all the way across just to double check.
Move it across
to make sure I'm going to catch it.
You're going to catch it, okay.
And then if I'm not going to catch, I can make adjustments.
You know what? It looks like we're going to be good all the way across
and that's because we use the channel lock.
That's right.
So it makes such a difference.
Okay. I'm seeing the...
There's a
method. There's a method here. I love it. Okay. So I'm going to leave the channel lock on where I had it there, and I'll just go ahead and get my thread started. And I'm going to turn off the baste this time, right? We're stitching for real.
That is a really good tip. We're going to turn off the basting stitch. Okay. We're going to run maybe 10 stitches per inch.
Okay.
and just running a nice straight line across.
And you can see how stitching with the glide foot is great too.
Oh, it really is.
Okay, so before I get to a pin, I'm going to stop and pull that out. And then I'm going to hand the machine off to Denise here.
And I'm going to stop and pull that out.
Yep, there you go. And she's just going to keep, I like team quilting. We should do this more often.
I think so.
Kind of fun.
I'm going to pull that pin out. And then when I get down to the end, I'm going to pull that clamp hook out of the way. And I'm just going to like back stitch at the end here.
Oh, smart.
And then we're going to disengage that channel lock again, and I'm going to bring my thread up.
Okay. It looks like it's a little easier to actually move the machine on the back of the Minky than on the front.
I agree, because we don't have that extra fluff.
The nap. Yeah.
That extra fluff. My kids call it Minky fluff.
Minky fluff, I know. And when you piece with Minky especially, it ends up everywhere.
Yeah. And pro tip, keep track of your pins. I have sewn a few pins into quilts, so make sure you're keeping track of them.
What do you mean? I know nobody ever does that. Or scissors or anything else. Yeah, we won't talk about that.
And then magically, we can pull this down, and look how perfectly straight that is.
It is.
So soft.
I know, and I love how we have it all lined up, so it's nice. We'll just pet the nap right there.
Nice and straight, and we've got this quilted all through 3 layers.
Yeah.
And then we've also, we're piecing as we go. So we didn't have to struggle with any of these curling edges or anything on our domestic machine before we started.
Yeah.
We were able to do it all right here on the Longarm.
And get it so nice and straight. I think that's such a great tip, and any of those methods we talked about, using a ruler, using all 3 different kinds of channel locks, all of those will give you that really nice straight line.
It sure will. And it just looks great. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our side clamps off.
Okay.
And we can advance the quilt, and we're just going to keep adding strips.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's add some
more. Again, if these are getting in your way, I'm going to just...
Why don't you just grab some of the scissors over there, and we'll just trim them off as we go. That way when we get done, there's less to trim, right?
And the Handi Quilter batting shears are perfect for this.
They're fantastic, aren't they?
I think they're wonderful.
Yep.
They just cut through like butter.
Like butter. They're the ones that live in my special drawer that only I know where it is and how to get into it so that they don't get used to cut cardboard.
Oh, yes. I actually have 3 pair of them because one got used with cardboard.
Oh, goodness.
One I use all the time, and I have one put back just in case.
So if we do that, then we can just go ahead and advance here. And you want to be kind of careful while you're advancing, Minky, so that you don't stretch it.
You don't want to stretch it. So,
and we're not gonna advance this clear to the top because I want to make sure Denise can still reach it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
My short little arms here. Okay, so as we've advanced, you'll notice we've kind of got a little bit of bunching and bubbling here. That's perfectly normal, and it's fine. Don't worry about that. And again, if you have a little bit of fullness in this, when you're done, you can just pop it in the washer and dryer, or even just the dryer with a damp towel. Kind of helps everything shrink up and marinate together.
Exactly. Well, and if we wanted to, we could go through and do some quilting in here too. Right now, we're not going to take the time and do it, but if you throw a little quilting in there.
I love doing that.
It holds everything together,
I like finding a nice border design, and after I've done this, I'll go back and I'll add a nice border in between each row. It looks great.
Okay, now Denise, I have to admit, I just dropped this on the floor, so the knot might not be going in the right direction.
Okay, so that's actually really easy to check since we have a printed selvage. If you look over here, the selvage here and the selvage here match.
So the selvage here on this side is white up here in the printed, and I have this actually flipped the other way, so that tells us right there.
Turn it around.
Denise, what a great tip. So now we've got this so that we have that white selvage there. When we pet the fabric, it's all going in the correct direction.
And we're just going to flip that over. And we're just going to repeat the process.
Okay.
Now, if you're not really confident in trying to keep all those layers together, go ahead and baste the blue down.
Okay.
If you feel confident, just lay that on there together and just pop a few pins in there.
Okay.
And that just gives us some stability.
Absolutely. So...
And Kim's confident. She's going for it.
I'm confident. Although I want to do your little trick with the channel locks again. So I have the channel lock set right now. I'll let you get that pin in there. And then I am just going to move the machine across here and make sure that I'm going to catch everything with my channel lock set where it is right now.
And you'll notice we've got a really generous seam allowance.
We do,
here.
although look, as I'm getting over to this side, not so generous.
So we're just going to make some adjustments. And
we may need to adjust my channel lock actually a
so
little
because
bit.
we know this is the shallower side.
Well, look at that.
That's
I'm going
wonderful
off the edge.
that you checked. So we're going to adjust to this side. We're going to bump that up to where we know we're catching on this side.
That's perfect. I just adjusted. I moved the machine up and I'm going to reset that channel lock and go all the way across. Hey,
that's perfect.
What a great
now we're going to
tip,
catch.
Denise. When you're piecing on the long arm, that way you make sure that you don't leave any parts undone. You don't miss any of those parts because you don't want to go back and do that.
And I'm going to reset.
Okay, so I'm doing your little back stitch thing over here on this side. And I'm just going to go ahead and start stitching across here. When I get close to a pin, I'm going to stop and pull that out and adjust.
Make some adjustments here. Maybe I'll pop a couple more in.
Close, pull that out. I'm just about at the halfway point, so I'm going to pass off to you. As a matter of fact, I'll got that one. Yep.
So unlike piecing on your domestic machine, we don't have to worry about perfect seam allowances.
No, we don't.
We just have to make sure all of the layers are caught.
Yeah.
So I'm coming up to the end. We're going to back stitch and then go ahead and bring up our thread. So I'm going to take the channel lock off first. Move it out of the way. And my handy scissors are right here on our magnetic collar. I love that I always know where they are.
As long as you remember to put it back, right?
Perfect. So see how fast that is? We just added another row, plus we quilted at the same time. So
and you know what? Let's do a quick check here real quick. I just want to run this across. We could actually do this.
Do another row.
Do you want to go ahead and do that next row right there?
I think so.
It's a little bit of a generous seam allowance, but that way we don't have to advance. And then we only have one more seam after that one.
I can actually reach. Kim can reach all the way out here, and I'm quilting right here.
Okay, so let's double check. Did I? Oh, yep.
We're petting down.
We're petting down, so it's perfect.
So, and actually I want to show you. So we've got this laid right up over that. We're petting downward. I want to make sure I don't fold it like that.
Right.
We're flipping it this way.
Good. Very good tip. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put this back down here. And I held on to a few pins so we can lock those back in place.
And again, we just want to be able to see the fabric underneath just a little bit. Just see that edge.
Leaving a little bit of a more generous seam allowance than Denise's. Obviously, she has more experience doing this one than I do. I've done a handful of these quilts. And like you, I tend to do these with the leftovers. You know, I'll trim up a bunch of quilts, and it's those strips that you have when you get done, right?
Absolutely. What do I do with these?
And that's what I do my Minky quilts with. So we'll pull that one out. Stitching. I love that we're going to get an entire quilt piece.
Can you believe that?
In like just a few minutes. This is fantastic. All right, I'm going to pass that off to you. And then we have one more piece to put on, and then you're going to show us some tips for binding with Minky on the long arm.
No, on the long arm.
Such a great.
And again, I'm just holding back. I love having the ruler base on while I'm doing this.
It makes such a difference,
doesn't it? It really does. And I'm coming up, I'm just going to pop that side clamp off as I'm coming up to the edge. And we back stitch. And then channel locks are off.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's such a cute quilt.
Isn't this cute? And guess what? We're actually almost done with it.
I know, we have one more piece to put on here.
So fast.
Lickety split.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll bring this back over and you can go ahead and trim up that edge. And you know, if we actually leave this flipped over, it's a little easier for you to trim that edge, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I can just trim them right together, 2 strips at a time.
And then we'll make sure, now that I know your tip about lining up the edge. Okay, so we need to advance this first. So I'm going to flip this forward.
Here.
Yep. And then we'll go ahead and roll this up a little bit more. And we'll do it about, let's do it just a little bit more so that we can hopefully get the whole, we won't have to advance it again. So there we go. That looks good, I think. What do you think?
I think it's great. And again, I'm just making sure as I tighten up our pole here, I'm locking the ratchet where we've still got some play, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Not too much, but enough.
Yeah. We want a little bit of tension on the fabric, but since we did load it with the stretch going that way, we just have to be mindful of that, right?
Absolutely. It's if you get this over racked, you're going to end up with a little bit shorter quilt too.
Yep. Well, in some of these generous seam allowances, this one might be
okay. So did you check which way the nap was going?
I did. I used your little tip over here, and I made sure and lined up the selvage edge that had the white on it over here. So that's such a good tip. I had never realized that.
It doesn't work with the solids, but with the prints, it makes it pretty easy.
It does. It really, really does.
We're just going to throw a couple pins in again.
Awesome.
One thing that's nice is if you don't want to pin, the nap of the Minky, they kind of grab each other and almost lock into place.
Yeah, I noticed that. All right, so we'll do our last seam across here.
Okay, so we want to...
And we want to do a quick check.
Quick check,
We've learned this. Always do a quick check, so we'll just do a quick zip across.
And if your leftover strips are all different sizes, it just makes a really fun quilt. Don't worry about it if some rows are wider than others.
If anybody's getting out of measuring tape.
Yep, this is fast and fun.
No quilt police here. Definitely
not.
That's what we like. Okay. All right, I got that edge all lined up. I'm going to go ahead, start stitching across, pull out that pin. Next pin. Then we're going to do the pass off. Denise will pull that one off, and I'll hand that off to her.
And we're in cruise mode right now. You can be in precision mode
for
this.
Totally.
It's just fine.
Just be mindful if you stop that you be sure and turn off that machine.
You're pushing, you're stopping. And we're going to take off our channel lock.
And just like that, we have this
quilt is pieced.
It's like a 2-hour. I have a baby shower in 2 hours.
So my kids have timed me out. I've actually done one in 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Dang.
Start to finish, binding on all of it, and it's done.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. So now that we've just got this last strip, do we just want to do some basting to hold that down?
That's exactly right, Kim. We're going to go ahead and baste. She's going to get started with that while I trim off this end.
Okay. This is the best part. You know, we should time ourselves on how long it takes to do this with 2 of us, because talk about maximizing our
Absolutely. This is tag team quilting here.
It's fantastic. Okay. And we'll see, I did not check my channel up before I started going across here.
That's okay, because at this point we're basting. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, I'm going to pass that off to you. We're at that point.
Okay.
So,
woo, and I wobbled there. That wasn't even a wobble.
And you know, I didn't actually have the channel lock turned on. It's just the gears, engaged gears helping me hold that nice and straight. So that's good. Okay, so piecing, check.
Yeah,
ready
quilt
for the next
is
thing.
Like done. So there's a couple different ways you can move on with your binding.
Okay, yeah.
There's been times where I have enough backing fabric left over to where I take the quilt off and just kind of trim up my edges a little bit, and I just roll the backing over. Today, actually, I have a prepared binding, and yes, you can do binding on the long arm, but you'll see what I've done here looks a little different than our typical binding, doesn't it?
Well, number one, it's not folded in half.
It's not folded in half.
Because you don't need to.
You don't need to, because if you fold this in half and then try to stitch down, you are dealing with a lot of bulk.
Exactly. Plus, it doesn't fray.
It doesn't fray. Yeah. No, it's so nice and easy. So I like doing my Minky binding. I cut to about 2 inches. Sometimes I'm at 2 1/4 or 2 1/2. Really, it's, what did my ruler get moved over to? That's where I'm lining up to. So
I like that.
And again, when I pieced strips together, I made sure the nap was going the same way, or I matched the direction of the pattern. Like it doesn't match perfectly at the joins, but the direction's going the same direction.
Cool.
And then you'll notice I kind of have two rolls here.
You actually have this, you found the center. It's the pin
right
right
the
here,
center
right?
here.
Okay.
What I like to do is I like to start at a corner of one of the quilts, and I just start with the center in place, and I work my way all the way around. And you can start across, you can start top, you can do whatever you want.
So should I start here at this corner and we'll just show really quick?
And before I get started really quick, I look for my joins.
Oh, right.
Because I don't want those joins hitting right at a corner. So that makes a difference. So actually a tip here at the bottom, Kim was much nice and straighter than I was, but we can eyeball it here. If we put the channel lock on as we're doing this, it's going to give us a really nice straight binding all the way around, which really helps on the sides, especially on the right side of the quilt. As we finish up, it can look uneven. So this is going to help us keep things really nice and lined up.
So I'm going to line up the edge of the binding here with that actual channel lock line.
And you know what? A tip I like to do even, I'll actually start just right up here. And then I can handle the corner first and it's out of the way.
Why don't you go ahead and do that? I'll just step back and let you show us how you do that.
So we're going to pull. Again, our join is out of the way. We want to have that out of the way.
We don't want that on a corner.
And I'm going to bring it just inside the edge. And because I don't need to worry about this being perfect, I am just going to eyeball it. So the nice thing about this binding is when it's rolled over and you're done, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. It kind of has the appearance of lining up perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a really light colored thread on, and I'm looking for it.
Based stitch. I just turned that out for you.
Thank you for catching that. That would have, I've done that. I've bound a quilt with the basting stitch on. So thanks for catching that. So I'm going to get that lined up where I want. I'm going to go ahead and just do a little tie off here.
And then are you going to use your vertical channel lock?
I am, absolutely. I'm going to lock that vertical channel lock. I can take this pin out now. That marked my center. I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go ahead and start stitching down. And again, if you're using those channel locks that you've got on your carriage wheels, keep a really light touch on your handles. And I'm just kind of eyeballing that in there. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my channel lock. I stop my machine. Turn off my channel lock, and you can just stitch off to the side. I just need to get that out of the way so I can do my quick little fold. So, and I just want to fold that so I get a nice little crisp corner there.
Nice miter, right?
Yep. I still miter even though it's Minky. I just think it looks nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, it gives you a corner too. It gives you an actual corner instead of a little bit of more rounded. So
it does. It does. It just makes such a difference. So, and again, I'm just going to do a little fold. Come off that edge.
Just the normal fold that you do there.
Get lined up where I want again, and then I'm going to engage my horizontal channel lock.
Nice.
Now, here's something we should probably double check because we knew we had issues down there.
If we line this up with this line at the bottom, we know that we're going to be okay because that did make it all the way across.
That really did. You're right. We're going to go ahead and, so what I'm doing is I'm just going to line up right along the edge of that basting. And that's going to help keep us straight.
And then you'll just stitch along there.
Channel lock is engaged horizontally, and we're just going to go.
And having that table, the ruler base on there makes such a difference.
It really does, especially if you need.
So let's have you go over and stitch around that other corner, and then we can talk about how you take it off, trim it, and then finish it. Keep things nice and straight.
Yep, just lining things up again. Oh, I bobbled a little. You know, I'm not going to worry about it because nobody is going to notice. So when I come here to this seam, I just kind of want to push it out flat again.
Hold it open so you don't end up with a really, really big bump.
Exactly. And I do trim these down to about 1/4 inch. I don't want a ton of bulk in there. But the glide foot goes over these so nicely. Keeps things nice and flat.
It does.
So, and I just kind of want to have in mind where I'm going to stop. Remember, our edge here isn't maybe perfectly straight. So
Especially that edge because we were trimming things up.
Exactly. I'm going to go ahead and take my channel lock off so I can just do a little fold here on my corner.
Okay.
And you'll notice you get this little minky fluff everywhere.
Yeah.
It happens.
It's the thing that makes me clean my quilting studio.
It does. Yes, minky fluff and glitter. Those are the two things that will wreak havoc there. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of, you know what?
Flip that the other way,
You're absolutely right. So if you could see what I was doing there, I would have accidentally stitched across that way and I wouldn't have been able to flip my corner.
So you're going to stitch across and then come off the edge of your fabric a little bit. Yeah.
We were on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Now we can fold that the way that we need to.
I'm like, what the heck am I doing wrong here?
What just happened there?
So I've got a little gap here, but it doesn't matter because we're going to catch that when we do the domestic stitching.
So we'll do that.
So I am like all the way at the bottom. Okay.
That's okay.
So we're going to get lined up again-ish.
Okay. So now that you've got that corner folded, you're going to go ahead and set your channel lock again and stitch straight up. And we'll stitch up just a little bit and then we'll stop and talk about how we finish the rest of this.
Absolutely. So you want to stitch all the way off the side. So I brought the machine down and around, did my fold, and came back in from the other direction.
That's perfect.
And now I've set my vertical channel lock and I'm just going to come up.
Yep.
And again, if these clamps are getting in your way, you can take them off at this point. Because this is where this table is giving us a lot of stability underneath.
Ruler base.
Yeah. So I would just continue going around.
Let's go ahead and clip your threads and then we can talk
quilt.
about that. Yeah. So then when you, let you clip those threads.
I'm just going to snip, snip, snip. There we go.
Okay. All right, we'll move the machine back over here to the other side. So let's take a look at this corner over here. And so now what you'll do is when you take this off the frame, you're going to trim to like essentially to the edge of the Minky, right?
You are. Yep. And that's where those batting shears are fabulous. I don't even get out a ruler for it because I used
your
the channel locks.
Exactly.
So I'm going to cut through all with my batting shears.
Okay. And then you just fold it over and you'll just stitch it right down along the edge there because you don't have to worry about it fraying because it's Minky.
You can fold it once if you want, or you can stitch it to the raw edge and do a decorative stitch because again, you're right, it's not going to fray. So however you want to finish it at that point.
That's so cool. Well, we have a couple of samples we want to show of some different things. First of all, the quilt in the background here. So this is one, actually looks just like the one we just did on the frame, but this is that little quilt finish and you use that same binding technique on this binding, right?
I sure did, but that's a different, it's a different Minky. It was really, really fluffy. So, and I mean, and I can tell you it's not perfect, but it looks like it.
It looks
you can't
really
tell.
fun.
And it's such a tactile, fun edge to put on a quilt.
That really is. And I love how you don't have to fold it. Yeah, and I can see you just did like a little zigzag.
I did.
In there.
Yep, and it blends right in.
So we've got a couple of other little things to show you that would go along with just using Minky. So this is a sample. So tell us about this one.
So this is a little sample just showing how you can use that Minky fabric, and the texture of the quilting just comes through so beautifully. I love doing edge-to-edge quilting with a Minky back because your quilt on the back looks fabulous.
It does. Too. It really does, especially when you use a solid. It's gorgeous. And one of the pluses I think for quilting with Minky is it totally hides your stitches. Like you don't see it at all. So you can use whatever thread you want and it's really not going to show.
Not at all.
If you happen to have any little tension boo-boos, they just disappear in
Minky
here too.
is so forgiving if you're having tension problems. That's so true.
So here's another quilt that we've actually done some piecing with the Minky. So you can see we've got regular quilting cotton in here, and then we have Minky here. And so don't be afraid, right?
No, and what I love about this is we're seeing two different textures of Minky. We've got that smooth, and then we've got the dotty too. And it just, I love that texture. It looks wonderful.
It's so fun. And then this is actually not Minky, but the things we've talked about apply to this. So what kind of fabric is this?
So this is a fleece fabric, Kim, but it behaves a lot like Minky. It can have some stretch. And again, just pay attention before you load. Which way is it stretching? and be mindful. But you'll notice again, the quilting texture comes through and just looks amazing. And if you're having any little tension issues, it's really not going to show. It sinks into that pile of the fleece or the Minky, and you just get the texture of it. It's wonderful.
It's awesome. So remember that you can use those fleeces. I know that I have, I actually have a customer who loves to do the fleece on the back of her quilts, and I've done a lot of them, and it quilts beautifully. Same, and I would say all the same tips that we've given you for dealing with Minky apply to using that fleece.
Oh, they sure do. They sure do. And you can even do your binding the same way if you'd like. So when I do get to the end of the binding though, I did want to mention, I do pull off maybe that last 12 inches, and I do that on my domestic machine, so I can do a nice tidy join there.
Yeah, and have everything lay nice and flat, because I know sometimes, because I've tried doing the Minky binding on the Longarm. Yeah. I was trying to join stuff together and it stretched kind of funny, so I ended up unpicking it. So that's a great tip to just finish that last little bit on the domestic machine.
You could even just fold it and tuck it inside of each other if you want to keep going. Because again, those raw edges, they aren't going to ravel. So just trim the edge so it's just a little longer. You have a little bit of overlap. And then you can just finish it off with a zigzag.
It makes it work really well. Well, Denise, I think you have answered all the questions about Minky. However...
Oh, all of them. I'm sure there's some I haven't heard yet.
If anyone does have any questions, be sure to leave those in the comments. We love to answer those questions, and we love for the opportunity to help you solve the quilting questions that you have.
Absolutely.
So we want to remind you to be sure and subscribe and give us a like, and have fun quilting this week.